Hello mga kababayan! It's again another Blockchain Day and Crypto brought to you by Near Protocol, the future of blockchain and crypto. And once again, this is your host, Orvar Jam. I'm very excited to introduce a guest for today. But before that, bibigyan muna natin ng a little bit of background. So again, our guest for today is one of the founders of OP Games. So when it comes to games, usually mga Pinoy mahilig sa mga maglaro, di ba? Mga online games. So OP Games is a blockchain-based e-games platform. Now, that's quite a mouthful, but we're gonna unroll and unravel each one of that. So essentially, OP Games enables esports experiences for hyper-casual competitive games through tournaments and matches. But this time with cryptocurrency buy-ins and payouts. So, okay. And then also our guest has a bachelor's degree in behavioral science from Santo Tomas. And he's had experiences in such fields as different, kasi technology, banking, telecommunications, wealth management, engineering, and course gaming, of course. He was connected with such multinational behemoth companies such as HSBC, Apple, Merrill Lynch, StartHub in Singapore, Emerson, Tap for Fun, and R2 Reality Squared Games. And moreover, his skills are as diverse as talent acquisition, business development, project management, outsourcing, and coaching, and even training. Also, pareho kami, he's a certified polyglot. So he likes to learn languages. So like he speaks Filipino, of course, because he's Filipino. He speaks English, and he speaks Chonggoren, Chinese.
Chonggoren, yes.
Yes. And he's also been interviewed on different podcasts, different events. He appeared in different industry conferences around the world. So again, I'm very excited. Please help me in welcoming the gaming game changer himself, Chase Freo. Chase, welcome to the show.
Yeah, salamat Orvar. I appreciate the introduction. It's quite a mouthful too, pero I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm happy to share kung ano man yung nalalaman ko so far on the blockchain side of things. But it's great to be here. Salamat for inviting me.
Okay, and thank you then for the time despite the wee hours of the night there in Canada. So let's crack into this. Okay, so first question, Chase.
Yeah, that's completely fine.
Right. Currently, you're in Calgary, Canada, but you're from the Philippines. Tell us more about your geographic origin.
That's correct. Yeah, so I was born in Zamboanga City. My mom and my dad is in the military at that time, so I was in Zamboanga. I was born there. I grew up there until I was 13. Tapos when we moved to Manila, that's where I started high school. Tapos nag-college ako sa UST. And I mentioned it, I took behavioral science. But really at that time, you're just really confused as to exactly what you want to do. So it was like the safest choice so far. And I did that, worked a little bit in Manila, and then moved to Singapore to pursue other stuff in finance. So that's essentially where I'm from. In Manila right now, we live in Muntinlupa. So it's a little bit down south. Pero yeah, sa labas. But I like it. Mas chill, mas relax ang south. Pwede kang pumunta ng Laguna. So much better.
Yeah, in fact, when you spoke about Alabang, is that where your office is currently right now? Right?
So right now we don't have an office. Our office right now is Slack. Just because a lot of the team is all over the world. So we have somebody in Romania. My co-founder Paul is in Toronto. I'm here in Calgary, and the development team is in the Philippines. So it wouldn't really make sense to have an office for now, especially na rampant pa yung COVID. So hopefully we get to do that. Probably just meet once a year. But I think that the future of work is not gonna be in an office anymore, at least for the tech side of things. It's really as decentralized as the business in itself as well.
You're living up to the whole philosophy of decentralization of blockchain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Embodying it, so to speak. So did you get to speak Chabacano? Because Zamboanga?
Yeah, so I get to speak Chavacano, and then I left Zamboanga, and then moved to Manila, that's Tagalog naman, and then went to China, Mandarin naman, and then here in Canada, so back to English. So that's kind of like how it worked out for me in a sense.
So awesome. I should have put it there. I should have asked you that para malagay natin dun sa polyglot na section na Spanish or Chabacano, no? Wow. No, I was thinking Canada, English, but friendly English because they say like Canadians are more friendly than their American counterparts. But anyways. Yeah, I've got families in Vancouver, so mga friendly talaga yung mga tao dyan.
Yeah.
So,
generally they are.
Yes, they are in my experience. I mean, they're more friendly. It's not that I'm discounting the US, but in my experience, more friendly from Canada. Your yung apelyido mong Freo, it doesn't sound to me as a typical na Filipino. But
to be honest with you, I'm not sure, but my father is from Bicol, from Sorsogon, and there's a lot of F's for some odd reason within that region. So there's Freo, there's Frades, there's I don't know, maybe when the Spanish named that area specifically, lahat ng mga letter F napunta doon. It's from Sorsogon.
Okay.
Specifically in Bulusan.
Oh, do you speak Bicolano as well?
Unfortunately not. Hindi ko na natutunan ng Bicolano because I never lived in Bicol, and only my dad gets with his family and sisters.
Funny, because I speak Bicol. I did the volunteering work there, and it's a beautiful language as well. So
yeah.
Again, we both love languages. I guess yung wiring natin. Okay, so behavioral science, interesting. The safest siya, walang commitment, hindi siya parang hard na science, let's say coding or everything. Pero kung behavioral science, you still have your undergraduate, but it's na more non-committal, more fluid na baka I still don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Maybe
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly the whole thing why I took that course. I was like, okay, I don't really want to do well, first off, I wasn't gifted in terms of like being a coder. I'm not great at analytics and science in general or math. It wasn't my strong suit. And then funny enough, I ended up in finance. And then now I ended up in crypto. So it's one of those things that you try to avoid, but it just catches up to you. Na parang no matter how hard you try, na parang okay, ayoko nito. At the end of the day, after you graduate school, pwedeng dun ka rin babagsak. And you're actually gonna like it. And that's kind of what happened to me. Parang I said ayoko ng math when I was a student. And then here we are talking about crypto economics, talking about tokenomics, and the whole thing about NFT. So it's funny how it works that way.
Yeah. I guess it just comes naturally na kung maintindihan mo yung isang practicality or application ng isang bagay, no matter how esoteric it can sound, parang aralin mo eh.
Yeah, tama.
Diba? Tama. Did you consider any other majors before aside from behavioral? Just curious. Ano yung ibang options mo noon?
My other options before was actually legal management. I wanted to become a lawyer in the beginning. And then I realized ang dami babasahin. Sabi ko, ayoko magbasa ng cases every day. So I ended up choosing behavioral science just because it's a really flexible course, and it's also similar to industrial psychology. So it's a lot of like workplace related courses. We have group dynamics. So it kind of applied to running a company as well, which is great because a big portion of why a company becomes successful in general is usually how you run the company, human resources, how do you empower them, how do you create a safe working environment. So all of those things sort of like, okay, parang bumalik din sa pinag-aralan ko before. So it's you kind of like able to connect the dots looking back. Pero like in the beginning, you're like, ano gagawin mo sa buhay ko? I have no idea.
Yeah. It's like you went through full circle na parang you were trying to get away with it, but you ended up with it. And looking back,
Exactly.
Was that Steve Jobs who said that you can only connect the dots looking back? And Stanford.
I have no clue. It's someone, probably Bill or Steve.
Yeah.
But it's somebody. Yeah, it's somebody somewhere.
I guess that leading a team yourself, like a founder, you must have employed different concepts in behavioral science, because like you're dealing with human beings, not just a dry smart contract, but there are humans behind it that are prone to insecurities and all these other, the whole shebang of being a human.
That's true. And it's very important that then na parang talagang when you're hiring somebody, especially if it's a startup, that you really have to be very careful in terms of like who you onboard. You somehow have to create, or at the very least envision a culture before you bring in somebody to work with you. I mean, it's not that you're going to shape it, because obviously that culture is also going to be shaped by whoever comes in. It's evolving, pero it is important na parang you know what you wanted, so that you kind of like have a basis kung sino yung i-hire mo, because sometimes even though it's a skills fit, sometimes it's not a culture fit. And if you don't start with cultivating a culture from day one, medyo mahihirapan ka to really transform the company into a well-oiled machine that works together properly. So kailangan it's very well thought of sa simula pa lang.
It totally makes sense. If you don't know what you want in the first place, how would you know whether this person is for you or not? You're like existential, lost existentially. Then, wow. Yeah. That's what makes founders have this, very interesting and fulfilling lives, because you can get to.
That's true.
All different. You're not just pigeonholed in one area, but you're considering a lot of things, the bigger picture and all that jazz. Awesome. So just a quick question. If you could turn back time, what would you have taken aside sa behavioral science? Knowing what you know now, do you think?
Honestly speaking, if I can turn back time, I would have gone into coding. That's one of the things that I really would have, like, especially now that I'm founding a business as well. It's just great that my co-founder is a great game developer before. So as a CTO, he's just doing amazing. Pero I think that it could have, honestly speaking, I could have gone further if I know how to code. That could have made things faster as well for the company as well. So for me, it should be computer science, like no-brainer. I think I should have taken that. But it already happened. It's a thing of the past, and I don't think what I've done right now is serving me terribly. So medyo I'm okay with that. Parang nice to have that lang that I know how to code if ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Same here. I would have taken like coding or software engineering, kasi dami talagang applications ngayon eh. But I guess hypothetical scenario, we probably would not have had the same thought had we not gone through our path right now. So
that's correct.
That's so awesome. Education. Okay, so let's move to career. Now, I've listened to a lot of your interviews, so I'm familiar with paano ka na-end up sa game industry. But for our audience, maybe you can give us a background of from the finance from Zamboanga to the game industry.
Okay, so let's trace that back a little. So simula Zamboanga, dun ako nag-grade school, dun ako partly high school sa Ateneo. And then when my dad was assigned in Villamor Air Base at the time, because he's in the Air Force, so we lived in Villamor. And then I was studying in this school in Pasay City called Santa Clara Parish School. It's a Catholic school, katapat ng St. Mary's. And then college, obviously I wanted to go to UP, but I didn't pass the exam. Unfortunately, wasn't that smart. Tapos UST, pabasa naman tayo, which is great. And that's where I studied behavioral science. And then I moved to HSBC doing training after that. And then it's still here in the Philippines. Tapos after ng HSBC, that's where I moved to Singapore. And that's kind of like where I got exposed to different experiences na. So I started off with Apple, and then I moved on to investment banking in Merrill Lynch, and then a little bit of learning and development in Starhub. And then I was like, parang medyo boring yung buhay sa Singapore. It's super stable, it's great. You have friends, you have family and all that. Friends and good people, maraming Pilipino din. But I kind of like, okay, parang feeling ko I need to do something else. So I packed my bags and I moved to this small town in China called Yangshuo. It's a very beautiful town. There's like a lot of karst mountains. It's maraming rock climbers from all over the world would go there. At that time, it wasn't fully developed just yet, so the tourism isn't that great, which is good for us because we live there. So it's a little bit more. We keep it to ourselves. Parang ganun. So I spent a year there. I was teaching English in an English school. And then I was like, okay, sige, kailangan ko na bumalik ng Singapore because I think I had my fun here. But I realized na parang ayoko na rin bumalik sa corporate grind. So I decided to stay in China. As it turns out, I still have to go back to corporate grind. So I was working in Emerson, which is an engineering company. I was doing training and development as well. But it's based in the north of China, in a city called Xi'an. And I stayed there for about a year and a half, and then moved down to Chengdu, in the west of China, where I stumbled upon gaming. Just super random. Somebody I knew is working in a gaming company, and then he was like, "Hey, why don't you join me?" Tapos yun. I worked there for a time. I was doing business development for free-to-play games. Circa 2011, 2012 is kind of like the peak of free-to-play. Now you can actually get away with mediocre games, right? Na hindi ganun ganda yung games. A lot of people are buying in a purchase, so medyo it was a great time. And then because we became so successful in Tap for Fun, turning a small team of 10 into a team of 200, and sort of like turning a small amount of money into millions of dollars on a monthly basis just for one game alone. R2 Games contacted me asking me if I want to work with them because they have a browser games business, but they wanted to pivot into mobile games. And so that's kind of like where I started my marketing and publishing career. So I moved there. I did a lot of games publishing, marketing in general, partnerships with Google Play, partnerships with Apple, making sure that the games get featured all the time, talking to game developers and see if this is something that we can publish or invest in. And then there's a couple of work that I did in the Philippines as well. During that time, it wasn't that great. I mean, nauso yung MOBA, like 5 versus 5v5 MOBA, like Mobile Legends, for example. So, Mobile Legends came out. Tapos, there's this game from Tencent, which is Arena of Valor. And in between that, before Arena of Valor got released, I released a game called Heroes Evolve. We did some esports stuff in the Philippines too, quite like Southeast Asian winners. So it was in ESGS in the Philippines, Thailand versus Philippines yata yung they compete. But it was a great 1 year because at that time you're not the leader, but you're making money until Arena of Valor came in, marketing dollars came in, and the game drowned essentially. But yeah, so that's kind of like where it happened, and then that's how I met my co-founders too, because they were game developers and I was a game publisher. So it's just natural na magkita kayo, and they would usually pitch their game to me. Unfortunately, hindi kami nag-move on sa pagiging developer/publisher relationship, but that kind of became a huge turning point for us because we realized that each one of us are actually into crypto and into blockchain and the technology that enables it. So sabi namin, you know what? Why don't we come up with the company together? And that's how we all sort of like came together. Quit my job. I went to the Philippines, set up the company a little bit, registered it in Singapore, and then after that, I moved to Toronto and worked with my co-founders remotely in terms of fundraising, in terms of getting deals done, in terms of creating a product that we can be proud of. So that's kind of like the journey. Mahaba.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of meandering sa iba't ibang industry, pero yun nga, no, sa game. It's an interesting concept, yung game. And by the way, Toronto is like the Silicon Valley of Canada, right? Where tech companies pop up.
I'd say Toronto, but mostly I'd say Waterloo as well, which is right around next to Toronto. That's where the birthplace of Ethereum is as well. Vitalik is from Waterloo, so that's why there's a thing called ETH Waterloo every year, from how it stemmed out with Vitalik.
Right. Interesting. Because I think maraming Pinoy talaga gamers di ba? Like, for example, maybe the bright side of unemployment is you don't have any other choice but to play games. You have data and everything. And they say there's utility in the game when it in a sense na parang made-develop mo yung strategic na mga approach mo in life, if that is such a thing in psychology, and also like progress, and also the complexity of designing a game. Like I got to learn na talagang marami para siyang i-consider, no? Kasi you have to think about the player, not just because you have an idea na let's say, let's make this character, but how to balance them para hindi siya maging rig and everything. So maybe that's one of the things also that appealed to you, aside from also being an entrepreneur there. Now, not just in the game, but how did your transition to crypto take place? Paano yung nangyari na crypto and blockchain ka?
So even before I met my co-founders, I was already into a little bit of crypto. I was exposed to that early on during my finance years, but I never really paid attention. And then it just keeps on resurfacing until such time came na parang, okay, I think I have to give it a try. So I bought my first few Ethereums back in 2016. That's already too late actually. And then just kind of like went on from there. And then when I met my co-founders Gabby and Paul, and they were like, oh, okay, yeah, we're also like into crypto and blockchain in general. And so we kind of like really thought like what, on a deeper level, anong klaseng technology and blockchain, and how does it apply to games? Because sometimes when you are in the games industry, frustrations could happen in terms of like the amount of games that doesn't get published, even though they're really good. So just to give you an insight, say in a yearly basis, I look at about 300 games. And then only 15 of that gets published. So meaning, when I say 15 of that gets invested in. So the other games, they have to look for another publisher. Hopefully somebody would invest in them. But this is essentially where you see a lot of dreams crushed and hopes shattered, to say the least, because it's a lot of rejections could happen. And sometimes you are forced to, okay, ako na lang yung magpapublish yung sarili kong game. Pero as a developer, you don't have the marketing arm. You don't have the connections. You don't have the contacts with Apple and with Google, for example, to really get your game in the top spot. So medyo nagiging challenge, and it's kind of unfair na parang in the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, if you look at it right now, 90% of the revenue goes to a small 10% of the top 10 games in the App Store. So yung remaining 10%, pinaghahatian niya ng almost maraming developers, because the big developers like, I don't know, Zynga or King, for example, with Candy Crush, right? So those are the ones that makes a lot of money. So medyo may disparity in terms of like how small game developers can potentially succeed.
Right.
So kailangan maging viral ka, which has no formula. So
Right.
it's a very hit-driven business. So that's kind of like what happens. And so we thought, okay, I think blockchain and crypto is a way to go to change things a little bit.
Right. That's what I like about you and your cause, Chase, kasi walang nag-attend dito sa 90% or the majority ng mga game developers na they have potential, di ba? Pero walang sumusupport sa kanila eh, di ba?
I mean, it's a challenge here in the Philippines too. There's a lot of challenges developers face. Unlike other countries where there's a free flow amount of funding, or at least the government supports game development or software development in general. In the Philippines, it's really kanya-kanyang diskarte in general, which sort of like sharpens our developers too, because it gives them the ability to really be smart in terms of like how they could hustle. Pero I think they shouldn't be doing that in general. Like, I think there has to be support somewhere.
Right.
And I know that there are parts of the government that actually does that, but I think that it's not nearly enough as how Singapore enabled its community, or like China even does it. So so many things to learn as well from other countries in terms of like how they nurture the industry.
Right. So again, what makes blockchain and crypto so promising, not just in the game industry in general, in probably kind of leveling the playing field para lang din ma-enable yung mga small game developers, but for the benefit of sa mga kababayan natin, bakit kailangan nilang mag-learn ng crypto, or at least get themselves educated of the application and the importance of it sa real life? Bakit, and in what way do you think?
There's maraming dahilan. I think first of all, as a whole, blockchain and crypto in general, I feel revolutionizes or changes how we deal with money. Essentially, what we think is only the state can create something of value. Pero the truth of the matter is, whatever the people find valuable or deem valuable is going to be of value. US dollars is backed by nothing but trust of the people, but it's the world's currency. And so, there's really nothing that could stop you from, looking at Bitcoin as, the currency of choice of a lot of people. And it's changing. Mas dumadami na yung trust ngayon sa cryptocurrency. It has evolved somehow to create a much better infrastructure for people to really understand and transact crypto. So for me, you need to sort of keep up with the times as well. There are different models of like how people can live. A great part of that, specifically like in the Philippines, sobrang big ng Axie Infinity, which is a really great game, and a really good friends of ours as well. So it's helping. It's helping in the sense that a lot of people can pay their rent. May mga nakakabili ng bahay because the way games are played now, it's play to earn. So kumbaga, sometimes you get rewarded for your efforts in playing, which isn't the same if you're playing a centralized game. You play and sometimes they ask you to buy more. So here, your efforts, the way you handle or you actually participate in the network allows you to actually earn something more. So there's plenty of maraming incentives so far on the crypto side of things. And to be honest with you, unless you're trading, which is a different story altogether, if you just look at the practical applications of crypto and blockchain, specifically in gaming, NFT is a perfect example of that. It may not be soon, or it may not be now, but the metaverse is being created. A lot of interoperabilities from one NFT to another, and a lot of different business models happens now because of crypto, and something that wasn't enabled before because of how digital trust has been established by the blockchain. So because of that, I think it's high time that we can give crypto and blockchain a chance. Because sometimes ang pinakamahirap gawin is to really adapt with the change, or pretty much change because mas komportable ka sa alam mo eh. And so the more you educate yourself and the more na gusto mong matuto about something new, it liberates you from that chain of being trapped into what you currently know, and it could change potentially a lot of your perspective, your understanding of how to generate wealth outside of the usual 9 to 5, for example. So yeah, that's kind of like my thing. That's the reason why parang feeling ko it's a good thing to really look at these projects, look at those that matters. It's the same thing everywhere as well. People would say, oh, crypto is a scam, but so is a lot of different things. It's not crypto, right? It's just a matter of like which ones of these are actually making sense, na it's actually serving you rather than scamming you.
Right. Tama, no? Kasi ganun yung pag sinabing yung connotation ng Bitcoin or crypto or blockchain, negative ka agad because of the exploitation of these scammers.
That's true.
But if people understand actually the application of it, like what we're doing right now, we're into NFT. We work with Paras, yung mga minting. And I believe na dito yung mga Pinoy makaka-benefit kasi ang dami ring talented na mga Pinoy sa visuals eh.
Yeah.
So, ganun, in-inform namin sila na at least get your feet wet or your hands wet by opening a wallet or magbasa sa, let's say, Investopedia kung ano talaga yung blockchain, and then educate yourself para you're ready somehow. At least half-baked ka when the floodgates open, you're there to position yourself.
Exactly.
Tama. So specifically Outplay Games. So nag-iba yung business model ng monetization, di ba?
Yeah.
Could you speak more or elaborate more on that?
Yeah, sure. In fact, from the last time we talked, a lot of things has changed as well. So just to give you a brief background, before OP Games, we were Alto.io. That was 2018 to 2019, I believe. We were building tools for game developers to transition from Web 2 to Web 3. So from non-blockchain to blockchain. So may NFT minter, how to create NFT easily. That was too early though, back in 2018 to 2019. So at that time, hindi pa ganun ka lakas yung recall ng NFT. It's still a very, very nascent industry, even up until now. But it's not as mainstream now because now it's like people are talking about it. Even SNL is talking about it. There's a lot of artists that are actually going full on board on NFT. So now we thought, okay, let's change the direction a little bit. Let's move on to the lowest hanging fruit in the games industry, and that is the casual and the hyper casual games. So more of like skills-based games. And we thought, okay, I think tournament is what we can do for that. And then most recently, we went back to our NFT roots. So what we're doing right now is we still work with HTML5, like really casual or hyper casual games on the web, because these are the games that are easy to develop, they're easy to play, pero they're the hardest to make money from. When I say hardest to make money from is that as a game developer, you'd better be off with Unity para you can add Unity ads to the game, and then you can release it on Google Play or you can release it in the App Store. But if you're building a game on web, it's either you put it in a platform that pays you a small amount of money for showing a lot of advertisements in your game. So your game becomes unplayable because ang daming ads, right? So we thought, let's go back to NFT, but also add tournaments into it. So what we're doing now is essentially, if you play any of these mini games or like hyper casual games, on the web. Let's say snake.io. What we're doing right now is we're turning the entire game into an NFT. So the entire game is an NFT. We fractionalize this NFT. So let's say the game of Snake becomes 1,000 NFTs. We pre-sell that to the market. Whoever buys NFTs becomes part owner of the game. So what we're basically doing is we're lowering down the barrier for anybody to own a piece of the game. Because if it comes to think of it, before, if you want to become a stakeholder in a game or in a gaming company, you have to invest. The game company has to offer shares so that you can take part in the way the games and the companies make decisions. So the model right now is we're turning this into somehow parang cooperative. Na it's not only the developer who's responsible to make the game successful, because when you buy that NFT, you're basically part of the game, and so it's now becomes a community-driven game. And so we create a platform where you have multiple games that are NFTs with multiple owners as well. And the way they monetize this game is through tournaments as opposed to advertising. So it is in your best interest, if you're an NFT owner of game number 1, your interest is to make the game successful, to make the game better as a community. So may DAO na involved.
Yes.
A DAO is basically like collective decisions that can happen in an instant.
Right.
So let's say, for example, magpapasko na. Gusto mong maglagay ng Christmas update sa game. So you make a proposal, tapos yung community mo, the other owners of the NFTs would say, yes, let's add an update. And then there's a fund within the game treasury that would allow you to pay a developer to create the update for you. So similar to like a Kickstarter / Gitcoin model, that what we're basically doing is just basically lowering down the barrier for anybody to have a stake in a game.
Right. Wow.
And the more that the game becomes better, the more your NFT becomes OP.
Right. Wow.
Overpowered. So that's the reason why at some point in the future, Outplay will become overpowered. And we're gonna sort of like move from Outplay tournaments to just being OP in general. Because the NFT is not just a collectible, it also is a symbol of ownership. It could also become yield-bearing at some point. And then papasok na ngayon yung elements of DeFi and a lot of different other things.
Wow, my man, Chase. That's why ang daming nangyayari sa blockchain world. We're discovering how even Vitalik Buterin himself, he mentioned he admitted I don't even know what other applications this Ethereum network is exploring into. So it's amazing. It's like cutting edge business model there. So outpowered game or overpriced,
Overpowered.
Overpowered.
And then
overpowered.
It goes overpriced. So anything OP in general, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you mentioned Paras. We're actually going to be working with them on our first NFT launch. This June 5th, if I'm not mistaken. So anyone who's in the New York community, watch out for these NFTs. It will be available in Paras. 3 games right now will be turned into NFTs. We're offering a certain amount of NFTs available, and anyone who owns NFTs is essentially part of the game.
That's cutting edge. That is cutting edge. Wow. Okay. So, kung gusto nating maka-benefit yung mga Filipino na developer, by the way, are there some good developers here also sa Pilipinas?
Yeah.
May mga
Madami.
Mm-hmm.
Madaming magagaling na developers sa Pilipinas. The problem in the Philippines is medyo mahirap gumawa ng sariling IP. Because sariling IP. Or like intellectual property.
Right.
Because medyo sometimes kulang sa pondo or wala masyadong support ng gobyerno. So kanya-kanyang kayod niya as usual, di ba?
Right.
So para to sustain themselves, a lot of them do work for higher jobs. So basically, say EA, for example, or Disney would go to the Philippines to outsource some of their 3D rendering or whatever that is that needs to be done for the game. So parang call center, naging outsourcing solution ng Pilipinas. But only a few gets to really fulfill their passion of making their own games. Because mahirap din naman ang buhay. Sometimes you really have to take in other things, other jobs to sustain what you do. The good thing about what we're doing here is that the platform in itself, everybody can participate. If you're a game developer or if you're a developer, as long as you have an HTML5 game, it doesn't have to be a really complex game. As long as it's a competitive game, there's a hook, a repetitive hook. You can actually turn that into an NFT in the platform. Obviously, right now, there's nobody doing this other than us. But it's gonna happen where a lot of people will be doing this at some point, right? So I think it's similar to like how art NFT is. It has to be a good art, or in this case, it has to be a good game.
Right.
But the good news is they can work with open source codes that are already available. Unfortunately for open source codes, they cannot turn that game into NFT because that's not their code to begin with, right? It has to be your own game, your own code. But you can still reskin the open source code or improve it and put it in the platform and run tournaments with crypto buy-in and payout. So that's kind of like how you make money. But if you're a developer who owns a game, you can make it into an NFT, you earn money from that, but at the same time, the game is still earning through tournaments, so you receive royalties, and you receive a certain percentage of that tournament back to your coffers, back to your wallet. And then the community will also benefit from probably voting to distribute some of the earnings back to the NFT. So yung NFT parang lumalaki because there's more that are put in inside. So when you resell the NFT, the value of that is going to be much higher than usual.
Wow. So the network effect, the self-sustaining itself, it's self-sustaining kasi community siya.
Exactly.
And wow, that's amazing. So kumbaga, ano yung ma-advise mo sa mga budding or aspiring developers sa Pilipinas na mag-start na mag-honor ng kanilang muse in being creative in designing these games? Maybe should they dabble with the open source code muna and then make a tweak on it?
Yeah.
And then later on they get inspired, they start their own from scratch? Or how would you advise yung mga kababayan natin na interested mag-onboard dito?
That's usually what it is. Obviously, there's a lot of languages that you need to learn. Unity is one of those, but right now we don't have an SDK for Unity. Our support right now is HTML5 games. So JavaScript, HTML5, they can work with open source codes, or they can do their own game at some point. They don't necessarily have to quit their day job. Just last month, actually this month, sorry, we recently hosted a game jam. And about 200 games submitted entries or joined the game jam. And these games were made in 2 weeks. And these games are already super amazing. Really nicely done. Maganda yung game mechanics. And the winner was actually, he has a full-time job, but at night, he makes games, or on the weekends, he makes games. So a lot of these are really passion projects. And we just really have to be realistic about this. Na hindi naman parang gusto ko maging game developer, I'll drop everything and then I'll do game development. It's kailangan you practice, you create things continuously. and then eventually join game jams, for example, to really understand your capacity of kung paano ka gumawa ng laro. And I think that's my advice. Continue on building it, even if it's not feasible right now to actually be in game development. Pwede kang gumawa ng sarili mong game eh. And HTML5 JavaScript is probably the easiest language to actually make it from. And once you have that game, you can work with us.
There you go. So aralin nyo guys, you can watch this interview again. How about those on the side of the players? They can also earn, di ba? So of course you're almost like a B2B where you work with not the end user. Pero anong ma-advise mo sa mga kababayan natin na medyo gustong kumita ngayon sa online play to get paid?
Yeah, play to earn. Yeah,
play
that's
to
kind
earn.
of one right now, right? Play to earn, right? There's plenty of things that can be done here. It really depends on the mechanics. But for us, once the platform is ready, it's going to be ready next week in the near protocol testnet. Testnet pala, hindi pa naman mainnet.
Yeah.
So it's a way for us to like really find something that breaks para ma-improve yung platform. Pero what we're trying to do right now is to actually put in some level of incentive. So basically paying for your attention. So you earn rewards like the OP tokens, which is going to be released really, really soon. You earn OP tokens for playing the game. You earn OP tokens for doing quests, and you earn OP tokens for joining tournaments. So there's a lot of things that you can do with that. And once the token structure is done, and we've pre-sold all the tokens that we have, it's going to be mostly a utility in the platform na pwede mong kitain. That eventually could trickle down to exchanges and convert into whatever currency you wish, or whether you want to hold the OP tokens, so much the better. But that's kind of like where it is now. Different games have different mechanics and how you can make money from it. Axie Infinity is a perfect example of how people make money right now with Axie. And it's basically an effect of the network being so robust and the community being very anong tawag na to? Tight-knit. Ano sa Tagalog ang tight-knit?
Yeah.
Tight-knit community. Close sila. Yeah.
Right. Mga karancho.
Maganon. Oo.
Wow. So maybe later on we're gonna ask you where they can find these landing pages now. Pero curious lang, kasi dito sa Philippines may mga studios din na mga sikat, like we have Renita Games or Secret Six. Has there been any potential for collaboration with our kababayan na sa ganitong team?
Yeah. So Renita Games is actually a really good friend of ours. We have the same investors, at least a VC in Indonesia called DNC. So Renita Games, there's plenty of things to be worked on. At the moment, ang focus kasi namin is HTML5, and most of these game developers are doing Unity because the focus is mobile. So it may take some time. By November, we'll have our Unity SDK, and that's probably when we're going to start working with Renita Games.
Okay.
Or with other games in general in the Philippines.
Nice. Kasi the whole blockchain is just level the playing field, giving power dynamics back to the masses, where everybody can win. It's not like a zero sum. Parang win-win sa lahat. Diba?
Tama.
Wow. So where can people find you online for them to follow you? Ano yung mga updates?
So you can find me online on Twitter. Doon ako lang dal. Chase Freo. Just my first name and my last name. Tapos to learn more about OP Games, it's www.outplay.games, and that's basically where you can find our Telegram account, our Discord channel, and a few other things, LinkedIn, Facebook. all of those things, right? But for me, I'm mainly active on Twitter, or if not on Twitter, minsan sa Telegram. But other than that, yeah, you can find me anywhere. I'm easy to reach.
Okay. So Chase Freo, yung handle ChaseFreo.
Freo. Yeah. Tama.
Okay. Awesome. So last question, Chase, before we conclude. Ano pa kaya yung ibang questions na dapat na tanong ko sa'yo na baka nakaligtaan ko, hindi ko na tanong?
I think we've pretty much covered everything naman overall. I guess right now, probably parting words lang in terms of like who's listening to you. That it's never too late to really learn about crypto or the projects that are interesting. Just make sure na you do your due diligence. Pag-aralan nyo rin, crypto is not just about investing. It's not just about the money. If you're interested on the technology aspect of that, there's plenty of things to learn. Parang the movement in general is not just technology but also philosophical. There's a lot of models and mental models that can sort of like change your mind in terms of like paano mo titignan yung society ngayon and ano yung pwedeng i-improve that is powered by some level of decentralization. Being like the bank being or the unbanked being banked, or play to earn, for example, which did not exist a long time ago. So I think in general, parang it's important na you embrace and open yourself up to new things. And just because people are saying that it's a scam doesn't mean that it's 100% scam. Sometimes people just tend to give crypto a bad name as well. Obviously there are other scams. There are even scams for fiat currency. Mas marami pang nasa scam ngayon sa budol gang, where you give money, for example. Whatever the form of currency, whether that's dollars, peso, or Ethereum, there are people who can actually be creative to actually scam you off of that. But don't let that deter you from really learning the base of the technology. Because once you do, pag naintindihan mo na siya completely, maiintindihan mo rin kung gaano ka-importante na we take some of the power back from the powers that be, and back to our own hands.
Wow, that's pretty enlightening. And Chase, again, more power to Outplay Games para yun nga, to give the power back to these developers and honoring their creativity, and then onboarding the community. Yeah. We're gonna be in touch because the same network lang tayo, nasa Near Protocol kami, and then so yun. So again,
we'll keep you posted once we do our NFTs. We will be doing some airdrops as well. So watch out for that. But we're gonna be working closely with the Paras team on this one.
Okay. Pares kayo ni Paras. Sina Ricky, Okay.
Pares kayo ni Paras, si Ricky.
Sige. Hey Chase, great evening to you there in Calgary. And yes, welcome, always welcome. Looking forward to the updates on Outplay. And mga kababayan, again, learn about blockchain and crypto because nandito lang kami. We try to educate you and inform you of the importance of crypto and blockchain with Near Protocol Philippines. Thank you very much, and we'll see you
Salamat.
soon.